جهان تا است خواهم بود اگر تو جان من باشی، برایم خانه باشی، خاک باشی یا وطن باشی. تو آغوش بی اندازه هستی برای وسعت تنهای من از چشم تو میبینم جهان را، توی آینه بینای من. جهان تا است خواهم بود اگر تو جان من باشی، برایم خانه باشی، خاک باشی یا وطن باشی. من از تو جان گرفتم کنم فدای تو، ز جان گذر نمیتوان مگر برای تو. دل از تو بر نمی کنم توی جهان من، دوچار تو نمی کند دل از هوای تو، دل از هوای تو، دل از هوای تو.
دو سه یک دو سه
داشتیم یه بار دیگه
یک دو سه یک دو سه
یه خور صحبت کنیم
یک دو سه
یک دو سه خوبه آقا جان how you doing?
Da Gavareno.
Please sound check.
Dr. Kazem Gharibabadi, Ambassador, former Ambassador, and current Deputy Foreign Minister for International Legal Affairs with us. Also, we are going to have Mike with us today. We already started the panel on the dining or lunch table. We would have the pleasure to have Minister Harabin from Slovakia also. Also, we are going to have Maria Luisa.
not me
Not you, but the list is like this. So, Giulio Chinappi from Italy, and of course, my friend Anton Khlopkov from Russia. With the permission of the audience, also the panelists, we try to be more legalistic in the afternoon panel, since the title of the conference is International Law Under Assault. And we want to talk about different instances of assaults that these days the international law is suffering. My panel has already been started in the previous panel by many observations and views about the unlawful aggression by the US against Iranian nuclear sites, safeguarded nuclear sites, and the international ramification that this unlawful conduct can have for the future of the so-called non-proliferation regime. I was looking to the main articles which were written after the attack. The mainstream is a great concern about this dirty job. So in my panel, we are going to talk about the law applicable to the dirty jobs. Does the dirty jobs are subject to law, or some countries are beyond the laws, and as it was mentioned in Latin, they are legitimus solatus. They are not respecting the laws. The main writings tell us different concerns. The first concern is norm erosion. So we reached here from 1968 up to now with a lot of ups and downs on something which is called nuclear non-proliferation. And for sure, this incident, this practice can have a negative impacts on the existence and application of different non-proliferation norms. So this could be one aspect of the discussions in this panel. The other aspects which has been touched upon by many is about the implication on transparency and verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency and the safeguard regime that we have in accordance with the NPT. And for sure, the legal remedies which are available for countries who are victim, like Iran, under international law, other than self-help. We know that self-help still exists in the room, and many are relying upon their self-help, but other than self-help and different instance of self-help, what international community can give to Iran that helping it among the international community. So this year, I'm teaching international law. We are now in the 5th session of the new academic session, and this is the question from many students. Does international law exist? Secondly, why Iran should respect all international law, including the commas, but it's not protected even by the fundamental rules, the one that was discussed in the morning, like non-use of force, which is the bedrock, which is the bedrock. It is the phrase which is used by the UN Secretary General, the bedrock of international law and UN system. So I will start by His Excellency Dr. Gharibabadi, and my question would be how Iran qualify the current ongoing trend, in particular from legal perspective. We have noticed many communication which is available, very justified arguments, and very hard to be justified from the other side, even though there have been justification from the other side, and it is very important to know that the aggressor also justified the same rules. They communicated to the Security Council, and they justified the aggression based on the same laws which Iran relying upon that. So we will have the pleasure to have a summary from the legal perspectives and views of Iran on this incident. Of course, attacking the safeguarded nuclear site is not the only one. We should add also assassinating several Iranian nuclear and academic professors, scientists, which they also attacked and assassinated. And then based on that legal perspectives and views, we will see how would be the future of the international law applicable to nuclear non-proliferation. Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Hossein. It's a pleasure for me to talk at this very august gathering. So you raised a very important question. Iran faced two kinds of aggressions. One, aggression against its territorial integrity, and the second, aggression and armed attacks against its peaceful nuclear installations. The second one is a very most serious crime in my view, and it needs to be thoroughly discussed in a very legal format also. In my view, the foundations of the non-proliferation regime is mostly based on inviolability of nuclear installations that are under surveillance and verification of activities of the agency. That is very, very important. In the history of the IAEA, we had only very rare cases that the nuclear installations have been attacked. Some of them have not been under the surveillance and verification activities or safeguards of the agency, but the most important one are the activities of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that all of them have been under the surveillance and safeguards of the agency. any attack against nuclear installations. It doesn't matter whether it is actually in the context of sabotage or it is in the context of the operational threat or use of force, or even the assassination of the nuclear scientist is posing a great threat to the safeguarded activities and the peaceful activities of the countries, and in a larger context is a great threat to the international peace and security. All of Iran's nuclear installations that have been attacked by Israeli regime and also by the United States of America have been under safeguards of the agency, comprehensive safeguard agreement. You have received information this morning from Dr. Islami, the head of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, that extensive cooperation has been rendered by Iran to the agency, and also extensive verification activities and also inspections have been received by Iran. So all of those activities, mostly in the context of the enrichment-related activities that have been attacked by those two regimes, have been under safeguard of the agency. So this is a gross violation of international law, Charter of the United Nations. And you know that we have numerous resolutions in a legal format that have been passed by the General Conference of the IEA, by the Board of Governors, and also we have several resolutions that have been passed by the Security Council prohibiting and condemning the use of force against the safeguarded nuclear installations of the member states to the IEA. We have at least several resolutions that have been passed by the GC, General Conference, that prohibiting the use of force. And also we have in the case of Iraq, that while the OC Iraq reactor has been attacked by the Israeli regime that time, so a resolution has been passed by the Security Council, also presenting such an attack in the context of a threat to the international peace and security, and requested the Secretary General of the United Nations to follow up closely and monitor the situation, and if such an event occurs in the future, to report back to the Security Council. This is what Iran has asked the Secretary General after the attacks against its nuclear installations, that resolution has not been terminated, still it is in place, and you have to give a report and present a report to the Security Council that such an incident has been actually reoccurred or repeated by the Israeli regime against another country that is a member to the IEA. One very important element is that a regime that has attacked Iran is a regime that is not a member to any international disarmament and arms control treaties, is not a party to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Even the United States of America, that is a member to the NPT, but is among those permanent members of the Security Council, that unfortunately has the right to possess and to maintain and also to promote and build up its nuclear capacities. This is disastrous. You know, two regimes that have attacked Iran, specifically Iran's nuclear installations. One of them is not a member to the NPT, and the other is a country that possessing nuclear weapons, and you have been informed nowadays that they are going to strengthen and also to increase the capacity for actually new nuclear bombs and also to have new testers. Also, they have signed the CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Nuclear Treaty. But by the way, these two regimes have attacked Iran. Let's go to the background information. While Syria has been attacked, there was a reactor. That reactor, we have not received credible information whether actually there was a nuclear reactor or not, but they claimed that there was a nuclear reactor in Syria. Let's accept it that there was a reactor. The agency was not aware of that. But by the way, there was a resolution in the IEA. While OC Iraq has been attacked, we had resolution before the IEA General Conference and also Security Council of the United Nations. While we had the incident in Ukraine, this is also a discriminatory approach and double standard. The Director General of the IEA went there several times to see the installations in Ukraine, expressed concern, not only expressing concern, but also condemned the attack against the nuclear installations of Ukraine. But what has happened to Iran? Everybody, among those climate countries, they kept quiet. They kept silence, unfortunately. They haven't condemned the attack against Iran's safeguarded nuclear activities. Even they have not allowed the resolution, draft resolution that has been put forward by Iran with the sponsorship of a number of countries in the General Conference of the IEA several weeks ago. They didn't allow that resolution to be followed up and to be preceded, unfortunately. So this is the mechanisms that we are facing. These are the rules and the laws that we are facing, that they do not allow the implementation of the laws that they themselves have passed the laws, and they have participated actively in this process, unfortunately. So this is the situation. They have not allowed the IAEA to condemn such attack. They have not allowed the Security Council to take action against the attack against Iran and also attack against the nuclear installation of Iran. These are the most important issues that actually we have to take into consideration, that it seems apparently that politics works here, not the legal foundations, unfortunately. So if you have good relations with them, yes, you are at the good hands, so you will receive and also enjoy their support. But by the way, if you are going to adopt independent policies, even you are under the close monitoring of the IAEA, you are a bad guy. You should be condemned. And also your nuclear facility should be attacked. Not only your nuclear facility should be attacked, but also there should be resolutions against your country, pushing you, forcing you for more cooperation. Cooperation for what? We don't know. You know that Iran has two categories of nuclear installations after the attack. One category are the attacked facilities, those facilities that were devoted to the enrichment-related activities, and the second, unattacked facilities. Even after the attack, during past 5 months, we have cooperated with the agency, and we have allowed access of the agency to all those unattacked facilities. But regarding the unattacked facilities, regarding the attacked facilities, the ground is not ready. We do not know what has happened there. There is a risk of environmental radiation. There is a risk of the explosion of unexploded ammunition there. So we have not gone there. We cannot allow also the inspectors to go there because of the safety and security. But they are insisting to go there. Why? To see that what has happened there. They have attacked, now they want to see the damages. So this is not for the sake of the safeguards of the agency. Why? Because those activities, practically speaking, are missing. So we do not enrich uranium now at this stage. So what is the area of concern? Now they are discussing a draft resolution before the IEA Board of Governors, focusing on the phrases and the terms of the terminated resolution of the Security Council. What are those terms and provisions? One of them is to suspend enrichment of uranium. The second is not to engage in reprocessing activities. And the third is to engage in good faith negotiations with P5+1. These are the requests and the demands of the United Nations Security Council resolutions that have been terminated and now have been reimposed through that illegal snapback. So Iran is not enriching uranium. Iran has never engaged in reprocessing activities. Iran has implemented additional protocol for more than 3 years on a voluntary basis. Iran has implemented the amended Code 3.1 of the agency. So now what is the room for concern that now they are pushing for another resolution? They do not pay attention and consider the engagement and cooperation of Iran with the agency. Why? Because the cooperation and engagement is nothing for them. It is not important for them. They want to use these international mechanisms only as a tool to bring more pressure on Iran. If they are seeking for engagement and cooperation, now the path is very clear. We have cooperated with the agency. They had access to all unattacked facilities during past 5 months. So these are the facts, and these are actually the real information and authentic information regarding Iran's nuclear activities. You know, a regime that actually has claimed that Iran is seeking to acquire nuclear bomb. It's more than 3 decades that they are talking regarding Iran's fantasy nuclear bomb. But where is that so-called bomb? Even now that those enrichment-related activities have been attacked, still the Israelis are talking regarding Iran's nuclear fantasy bomb. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. They are not a member to the NPT. They have nuclear warheads. They have attacked their neighbors and also the countries in the region. They are even daring to say that so they have those so-called arsenals of the weapons of mass destruction. And again, after the attack and aggression against Iran, still they are talking regarding Iran's fantasy nuclear bomb, because that's a very good excuse and pretext to divert the international public opinion. That's the main cause that they are seeking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. In fact, it was a lot of food for thoughts and many issues, which I would like also to follow almost on the same line with the same issues, then to discuss about them. Among many points that you touched upon of them is this issue of double standard. You know, I would like to read for the audience some legal authorities, then we will go to the next panelist. This is part of a resolution of the Security Council 487 after Osirik attack. The Security Council, without exclusion, generally says that the nuclear attack constitutes a serious threat to the entire safeguard regime of the IAEA, which is the foundation of the Treaty on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation. I want to be the attention of the participants that this resolution was adopted unanimously with the favorable vote of even US and European Union. Thanks to a friend who is present in this meeting, he shared with me last night a part of the verbatim record of the Security Council, which I was looking forward for that. And one part was very interesting, the UK representative statement. He referred to the then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. He said that the government has already made it plain that armed attack in such circumstances cannot be justified, and it is a grave breach of international law. So the question is, does this legal authority has been changed now? And how this double standard, how this silence and inaction will help the future of so-called European normatives and values that we are well aware of that. Having said that, I will invite His Excellency MP Wallace to share his thoughts about, from a European perspective, how we should preserve these old and fundamental rules which shaped and which was established by so many efforts, including by the European efforts, and how this could help the future of nuclear non-proliferation.
Well, to discuss the European position on all of this, and you mentioned double standards. You're all well used to hearing about European values and European interest in international law, European interest in human rights. And it's funny, but myself and my colleague Claire Daly were in the European Parliament for 5 years. We never actually heard him talking about the UN Charter. They still pretended about the importance of democracy and human rights and freedom of expression. But what they said was one thing, and what they did was another. And I suppose a very simple example of the double standards you're referring to is that before the October 7th in 23, we used to hear a lot of condemnation in the European Parliament about women in Iran having to wear veils. Now, you might say, well, where is all this coming from? And they were up on their high horse on a regular basis, and they were very upset about the treatment of Muslims in Iran because they had to wear veils. But when bombs started to drop on Muslim women in Palestine, and thousands, tens of thousands of them were killed, tens of thousands of children, they had nothing to say about it. So it didn't seem like they were so interested in Muslims after all. And the truth be told, our approach to what had happened, for example, with the Israeli attacks on Iran, our approach to that hasn't moved very far away from the colonial mindset. It's still a case of the civilized against the barbarians. We're civilized, and if you don't agree with us and adhere to our values, then you're obviously not. Sadly, it has been a big problem for the Europeans and the North Americans that they can't seem to understand that every country, every culture is entitled to its own values. And it's for none of us to tell them what to do and what is right and what is wrong. It was shocking that the Europeans, not one EU member state, condemned the Israeli and American attacks on Iran. Not one. Now, this was as blatant a breach of international law as we understood it, as we could imagine. And not one EU member state could condemn it. But then, it does coincide and it fits with the fact that through over 2 years of the genocide in Gaza, not one single EU member state, not one, broke off business links with Israel. Not one. They broke off business links with Russia within a week. A war that they can't fuel enough. A war that could have stopped in February 22, but they didn't want it to stop. A war that they're still fueling. And they don't give a damn about the fact that about 750,000 of working class Ukrainians have died in it for no good reason. This is madness. And we have a real problem in Europe now with what you call double standards, what we call hypocrisy. And for us, the European Union is dripping with hypocrisy. The European Union, there was a time when we had a form of an independent foreign policy, but not anymore. They have gone much closer to NATO, the European institutions themselves. They have become total puppets of the US empire, and they do what they're told. We even signed an agreement with the Americans to pay 10% tariffs, which is a sanction. We're agreeing to sanctions on ourselves, and they're sanctions that are not good for us. It's mad enough that we stopped buying cheap Russian oil and started to pay 4 times more for LNG from America. It reached a point where somebody trying to make a car in Germany was competing with a guy trying to make the same car in America, and the European company was importing LNG from America and was competing against an American firm that was getting it for 25% of the price. And we think this is a good idea? It is incredibly sad that we no longer have an independent policy. And if we had an independent policy, I do think we would have condemned the attacks on Iran. We wouldn't have been madly enthusiastic about it, but at least we'd have went through the motions of actually condemning it because it was a total, blatant, 100% breach of international law. If we had still had an independent foreign policy, we would not have watched a genocide take place on our telephones for over 2 years and do nothing. I heard a panelist this morning praise a couple of countries because they had said things and done this, that, and the other. Listen, as long as you continue to do business with Israel, you are supporting the genocide. Stop telling lies about what you do unless you back it up with action. speaking of action, and the failure of the UN to deal with the attacks on Iran by Israel and America. They can talk all they like, but unless you do something, it means nothing. We're sick of the talk. We're sick of the lies. Give us some of the truth with some action. Do something concrete about it. There's facilities and mechanisms in the UN to do something about it through the General Assembly. Aside from the Security Council with the vetoes, right? There is facilities there to do it, and it hasn't happened. Listen, the theme of today's conference is international law is in trouble. What are we going to do about it? And it's been great to hear so many powerful speakers here, but I don't hear much talk about how are we going to fix it, and what are we going to do about it. Now, I can't talk all day, but that's not been dealt with, and that's the challenge. And until the world, I still believe that the Americans cannot behave as like such a rogue state on their own. I firmly believe that. Not everyone agrees with me. But the truth be told, the Americans haven't observed international law for 80 years and more. Only they put a gloss on it. And you know what? As bad as we were in Europe, and as weak as we are in many respects in terms of how we deal with US empire, and sadly how much we were part of Western imperialism ourselves, and still are, sadly, that time, in the past, we actually were able to curtail their activities a little bit. And remember, in 2002 and 2003, the Americans were hell-bent on getting the support of others before they invaded Iraq. They could have just invaded themselves. They wanted the support of others. They wanted the coalition of the willing. They ended up getting 45 countries. They bullied them into it. Yeah. And it was interesting that France and Germany didn't join them at the time. But now they have Merz and Macron for leaders, an excuse for leaders. Your mother would be better. I mean, it's shocking how at a time of crisis in Europe, we have such an absence of real leadership. And the poor Brits have Starmer. You wouldn't put him out for your rob. I mean, this is a real crisis for the Europeans, and I'm sorry that we were complicit and supportive of the genocide, and I'm sorry that we've been silent about the treatment of Iran by Israel and the US.
Thank you. Thank you very much, MP. In fact, it was very, very enlightening, and it's pleasure to hear from your inner voice, you know, so you do not only referring to the international law, but also you are touching your inner voice, what is coming from the bottom of your heart, and your firm belief about the international law. I would like also to continue on this aspect because everyone is talking about breach of international law and the possible precedent which can turn the situation to a new rules, new life. In fact, I don't personally believe and agree with the metaphor of glass of water as we had it in the morning. In fact, international law is the bottle of life. We should secure it. It is very important, and unless this bottle of life is not secured by another bottle of life, we should not break it, we should not fill it, or we should not make it empty. I would like to share with His Excellency Minister Harabin, because he was Minister of Justice. What legal implication such violation can have for the future of international law? We have a very noble statement by the International Court of Justice. We know that this is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, which I like it and I want to share with the audiences and also the panelists. We know that the US and Israelis, they justified their action with the same international law. So they didn't say that we do it because we like it, this is our wills. They said because international law permits us. The International Court of Justice has a very noble statement. It says that if a state acts in a very prima facie incompatible with a recognized rule, but defends its conduct by appealing to exceptions or justifications contains within the same rule itself, then whether or not the state conduct is in fact justifiable on that basis or not, the significance of this attitude is to confirm rather than to weaken the rule. So my question from His Excellency Minister Harabin, how do you feel? Do you feel that this precedent is going to supersede what we have it in the past, in the Security Council resolution, in the IAEA resolution, as it was correctly pointed out by His Excellency Dr. Gharibabadi, or this justification will be considered as an element to foster the ongoing applicable international legal system? Please, you have the floor.
Уважаемые коллеги, дорогие гости, я хочу очень поблагодарить за приглашение на эту встречу в Тегеране, которая есть.
Let's have the interpretation.
Oui.
Sorry. Can we continue?
Я хочу поблагодарить за приглашение на эту конференцию в Тегеране, которая однозначно выразивает волю Ирана по мире во всем свете. Позвольте мне обратить ваше внимание на нашу тему, в частности, на 3 основных вопроса. Во-первых, на существование основных и общепринятых норм международного права. Речь идет прежде всего о уставе ООН, которая прямо запрещает государствам применение силы или угрозы силой против других государств. Далее, сам договор о нераспространении ядерного оружия ясно устанавливает право каждого государства на мирное использование ядерной энергии. Например, Российская Федерация в мае 2024 года внесла на рассмотрение Совета Безопасности ООН проект резолюции, который требовал запрета размещения или использования оружия в космосе. Здесь следует подчеркнуть, что Совет Безопасности ООН эту резолюцию не принял. Притом речь шла о запрете любого оружия, а не только ядерного. Одновременно сегодня США обвиняет Российскую Федерацию о том, что она пытается разместить в космосе ядерное оружие, которое могло бы уничтожить их спутниковые соединения. Во-вторых, то факт, что помимо подпиток атак на иранское ядерное объекты, уже есть опыт военного конфликта Украины против Российской Федерации, который также прямо подтвердил атаки на ядерные объекты в Курской области в августе 25 года и также многократные атаки киевского фашистского режима на Запорожскую ядерную станцию в том же году. Эти атаки были подтверждены также сотрудниками Международного агентства МАГАТЭ. Во-третьих, каждое государство имеет право на самозащиту в соответствии по статье 51 Устава ООН. В случае нападения силой без сомнения это касается и Ирана при атаках Израиля. Мое предложение для рассмотрения участникам панела. На мой взгляд, необходимо совместно использовать все доступные дипломатические средства и задействовать международные площадки для выработки и продвижения общей позиции, по которой любые попытки атак на ядерные объекты со стороны любого государства следует квалифицировать как террористический акт. И самое главное, совместно признать также государства террористическими. Без малейших сомнений это представляет реальную угрозу не только утечки радиации, но и вспышком всеобщей ядерной войны. Ни одно государство не может быть уверено в том, что само не станет целью террористической атаки на свои ядерные объекты. Поэтому необходимо совместно защищаться от терроризма. А террористическое государство следует подвергнуть санкциями политической, дипломатической и экономической блокаде до тех пор, пока оно публично не откажется от таких атак или с ним не будет приняться иные меры. В случае с Украиной этот вопрос уже сегодня довольно ясен. Не только предполагает конец нелегитимного фашистского режима в Киеве, но очень вероятно, что как независимое государство оно будет находиться под опекой великой державы, прежде всего под контролем Российской Федерации. Для меня при этот момент все.
Many thanks, Mr. Minister. I would like to use the same issue to be continued on the IAEA safeguards. So we know that the nuclear non-proliferation has 3 pillars: non-proliferation, disarmament, and peaceful use of nuclear energy. I would like to ask Mr. Chinappi from Italy about the 3rd pillar. In 1981, the Security Council not only condemned the Israeli aggression against Iraq, but also stipulated that fully recognizes the inalienable sovereign rights of all other states, even it was not limited to Iraq, exceptionally the developing countries, to establish programs of technological and nuclear peaceful purposes in accordance with the present and future needs and consistent with the internationally accepted objectives of preventing nuclear weapon proliferation. For sure, this aggression should not be seen only from the perspective of non-use of force and breach of this internationally recognized principle, but also from non-proliferation law, which gives these inalienable rights for all states to peacefully use the nuclear energy. As it was mentioned, all sites which were under attack were also under the safeguard of the IAEA. They were not so-called covered sites or non-declared sites. Hopefully they were under the ground, which limited the human casualties. If that was on the ground, no one knows what would be the human loss of life and etc. But from the other side, my question would be that in the non-nuclear states, there is a big question why we should be within the NPT. If we are within the NPT, if we are the member, if we are giving access, if we are providing information to the IAEA, but at the same time, we do not receive security guarantee, and to the contrary, we are under attack such blatantly, why we should be there, and how this change of status of these different pillars will affect the future of the nuclear non-proliferation. Because now, as it was mentioned, many big parts of Iran's nuclear program is not effective and it's not working and operational. So Iran's rights at the same time, in accordance with the NPT, breached. What is the view from a European lens on this perspective, which can have a broader implication for the future of non-proliferation? I don't want to refer to many statements from the region. I don't want to refer to many political agreement which has happened after this aggression. No single country I don't want to crystallize here, but it seems that there is a big question now among other countries other than Iran, why we are there. So please, can you provide us with your insights on this aspect?
All right, thank you very much. So we can start a little bit of the history of non-proliferation, because as was mentioned this morning, in 1945, the United States were the first and until now only country to drop nuclear weapons, and they dropped it on 2 cities. When they had to decide where to drop the bomb, they take a clear decision. There was a debate between the President Truman and the counselors, and they decided to drop the bombs where they could kill the most people, okay? I had the chance to visit Hiroshima. And the documents clearly state that Hiroshima was designed because the weapon could have killed more people. And the two bombs in 1945 killed hundreds of thousands of Japanese people, considering the direct victims and then the consequences in the long term. However, I strongly believe that the real goal was to demonstrate to the Soviet Union the power of the new weapon that the United States achieved. Of course, at that time, they could do it for two reasons. One reason is they were the only country to have nuclear weapons. The second one is we can kind of justify, but of course we cannot justify. But if we want to find a justification, we didn't know exactly the consequences of the nuclear weapons. But after the Soviet Union also realized the atomic weapon, then of course non-proliferation became a need. And then more countries joined. And during the Cold War, we risked the atomic Armageddon. And of course, we came out with this great idea, which is non-proliferation. So, as you said, we have two kinds of nuclear power. One is for weapons, the other one is for energy. And we know how useful can be the peaceful use of nuclear energy. And we can see it in many countries. In Europe, we have so many countries that rely on nuclear energy. France is one of them. Lithuania is another one. Switzerland. However, we also decided that all countries should have access to that technology. And we can see that several countries in the world, not only in Europe, rely on nuclear energy. Another one is Japan. And now even countries in Southeast Asia, they're trying to invest mostly with cooperation with Russia in nuclear energy, for example, Indonesia or Vietnam. But what happens? The main problem of international law is that it's very nice when you read it in theory, but then the application is the problem, because there is no way to make sure that all countries respect international law, okay? So we have seen that some countries, in particular the United States and Israel, have broke the international law several times, especially recently with the attacks on Iran, for example. And another example was made before by the previous panelist about the nuclear facilities of Zaporizhia and Kursk attacked by Ukraine. That, by the way, the media in Europe tried to make us believe that after the Russians conquered Zaporizhia, they attacked themselves with their own bombs on the nuclear facilities. But that said, what does it mean? It means that until now, we have seen some countries that do not respect international law, do not respect non-proliferation treaty, particularly Israel. Everyone knows that Israel has nuclear weapons, but there is no way to verify how many, what are the technology they have, while Iran was trying to respect the agreements taken. And we have seen what happened to Iran. So we have another example of a country that decided to leave non-proliferation treaty. It's North Korea. So North Korea took a strong decision when they decided to leave the non-proliferation treaty. They knew that they were going to face consequences after that act. But they took a decision that was informed. They knew if we do our nuclear program, we're going to face consequences. And the decision was taken because Kim Il-sung decided that it was worth to have nuclear weapons in order to defend the country and even face the consequences. But that didn't happen with Israel. So, as my fellow panelists from Ireland and from Europe said before, Europeans always promote themselves as champions of international law, champions of human rights. But when it comes to apply those ideas, they do it with a double standard. So, of course, they condemned the countries that are not aligned with the American perspective, mostly, because, as he said, Europe only follows the foreign policy that is imposed by Washington. There is no independent foreign policy, so I don't see how the solution could come from Europe. This morning, I've heard one of the panelists saying that Europe is a declining power. But I do not agree with him, because Europe is not a power at all in the 21st century. Europe lost the status of a power because they are just following, okay, what comes from Washington. They do not have any independent foreign policy. They do not have anymore any economic and monetary policy. So it's not a power. The game of the 21st century is between United States, China, and Russia, that's all. And of course, there are the emerging powers. So the answer, the solution cannot come from Europe. Europe now is relegated at the last place in the global situation. I think the only solution can come through the emerging powers. So through associations like the BRICS, they can create a new world order based on real international law, democratic international law, where all countries matters the same, and not a few countries can decide for all the others. Unfortunately, in Europe, even if we're not a power anymore, most people still believe they are, and they act that way. And they feel the right to judge policies from other countries, decisions from other countries, the economic system, the political system, the culture of the other countries, but we have no right to do so. As was said before, we should accept that all countries have different political systems, economic systems, different culture, and they can choose their own way to live. So the solution comes from a multipolar world, in my opinion, where even the small countries have a voice, and even the small countries can have access to nuclear energy without facing consequences, of course, for peaceful purpose. And if you let me add one last point, is, as I said before, non-proliferation is a great idea in principle. However, in recent times, non-proliferation has become a weapon of the United States to keep their hegemony in the world.
Okay.
So not to allow the other countries to have access to the nuclear energy, whether for peaceful or non-peaceful reasons, but it's a way of the United States to keep their hegemony. So the answer is, United States, they are a declining power. The new powers, they can create a new world order where all the countries can be respected and all the countries that can take their own decisions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it seems that we should not that much expect from Europe as we are expecting here in Iran. Of course, Europe in Iran is different Europe, so we don't have a unified Europe. By Europe, we mean European Union, member states of the European Union, all countries located geographically in Europe, and they all together. But we will continue on that because it's very important. The hypocrisy or double standard that you raised, will be very important for the future of international legal system. We admit that there is a level of discretion internationally to apply the laws. So to entitle a right is different to exercise the right. So if you are member of the UNCLOS, Law of the Sea Convention, it does not mean that you can have a ship in the high seas. You should have the ship, Otherwise, you are not using the freedom to navigate under the high seas. So it was distinguished between these two aspects. But still, this is the question. Does really the European system reach to that point that, no, we don't have any authority and any power to continue this path to ensure the respect of the so-called European values or international legal order? So we will continue on that. But I want to raise another aspect of the legacy after the attack against Iranian nuclear sites. One important element of nuclear non-proliferation is the so-called safeguard regime. By the safeguard regime, we mean that those that are not nuclear power state country, they should give access to the watchdog IAEA access for verification of non-diversion. Having said that, we see that there is a new situation under which there are a lot of security concerns which are legitimate for Iran, not to apply the safeguard as normal as it was before the attack, because the formula is very, very, very simple. I provide information to the IAEA, then some countries receive those information in order to follow their own national policies. And it might lead to future attack. In the safeguard regime, we have individuals, sites, as well as facilities. And now the individuals, many of them were attacked. Many of the sites and facilities were attacked. And we have some materials which still is left. So the question from my friend Anton is that to what extent this incident affected the normal application of safeguard regime? Because here we have a law in Iran. The parliament obliged the government not to cooperate until receiving security guarantee for the sites and for the country to prevent further attack. From the other side, the IAEA act very normal as it was nothing happened, and as it is the normal situation. While I want to share with you the fact that even under the Iran IAEA so-called Safeguard Agreement 1974, it is recognized that the agency should take account the security concern and confidentiality of information of Iran. So now we will have the floor to Anton to tell us to what extent this incident has negatively impacted the safeguard regime of the IAEA.
Thank you. Sadat, I should say this is a simple question. I will try to respond quickly, and after that to cover a few other questions as well. But after such a brilliant presentation of Minister Harabin, former Minister of Slovakia, in Russian, I think it would be inappropriate for me to speak English, so I will switch to Russian, and those who need interpretation equipment, colleagues, please use that. I will make a pause for a second. На мой взгляд, Садат, спасибо за ваш вопрос. Ответ достаточно простой. Я хотел бы сослаться на выступление других коллег сегодня, в частности, доктора Манал Радван, которая сказала, что нам надо самим действовать, нам надо наполнять этот стакан, пусть вы и не привержены этой аналогии, но я абсолютно согласен, что складывающая ситуация касается безопасности наших стран, и Ирана, и моей страны, Российской Федерации, поэтому нам надо также активно действовать, а не реагировать. Доктор Багаи на предыдущей сессии тоже сказал, что необходимо быть проактивным, и я с этим абсолютно согласен. Хочу напомнить, что МАГАТЭ на регулярной основе задает вопросы Ирану. На мой взгляд, настало время Ирану задавать вопросы МАГАТЭ, в том числе по тем аспектам, которые вы сказали. Каким образом конфиденциальная информация попадает в ненадежные руки? Что можно сделать для того, чтобы конфиденциальная информация не использовалась во вред и сотрудничеству между агентством и Ираном, и во вред Исламской Республики Иран, которая эту информацию предоставляет. И в нашей дискуссии по линии научно-исследовательских организаций мы соответствующие вопросы коллегам из МАГАТЭ задаем. Поэтому я с вами согласен. Есть вопросы, на которые МАГАТЭ пришло время ответить. Что важно здесь, я хотел бы это подчеркнуть, на мой взгляд, для начала эта дискуссия должна вестись в МАГАТЭ не публично. Есть достаточно каналов, по которым соответствующие вопросы можно до МАГАТЭ довести, поскольку публичная дискуссия на эту тему, на мой взгляд, будет подрывать доверие к гарантиям и к взаимодействию МАГАТЭ, в том числе с Ираном. Это первое. А второе, хотел бы несколько слов сказать по другим вопросам. Я думаю, что как минимум среди спикеров на этом заседании есть консенсус, что атаки со стороны Израиля и США во время 12-дневной войны по иранским ядерным объектам, находящимся под гарантиями МАГАТЭ, как и по другим объектам, так же, как и убийство ученых, невинных детей, женщин, является нарушением международного права. Но хотел бы вернуться в этом контексте к очень важному вопросу, который поставил господин Wallace в его выступлении. Что дальше? Что из этого следует? Поскольку и многие из нас, большинство из нас, и многие страны признают факт нарушения Израилем и США международного права. Что это значит для будущего ситуации вокруг иранской ядерной программы, тот кризис, который мы сегодня обсуждаем? И здесь хотел бы высказать несколько соображений, что дальше. Первое, на мой взгляд, те подходы, которые использовались в рамках переговоров по СВПД или по-английски GCPOA, они провалились, они больше не действуют. СВПД было большим достижением, но из-за выхода США и неспособности европейских стран к активной политике договоренность разрушилась. Ключевыми элементами этой договоренности было наличие политической воли в США и в Тегеране, в Иране, найти совместное решение. Сегодня мы видим, такого желания в Соединенных Штатах нет, к сожалению. Второе, важный элемент переговоров был компартментализация, или по-английски compartmentalization. Сегодня, как мы знаем, в том числе европейские страны, и не только, увязывают ядерные вопросы со всеми другими. Поэтому вот этот важный элемент, который помог выйти на договоренности СВПД, тоже не действует. Сегодня много в этой аудитории говорилось о роли Европы, которая была позитивная, важная в рамках переговоров по СВПД. Европа не была единственным медиатором, важную роль играли другие страны, Китай, Россия, но роль Европы, безусловно, была позитивной. Сегодня Европа скорее часть проблемы, нежели часть ее решения. Этот список можно продолжать. И одна из проблем, с которой, я думаю, что все из нас сталкиваются, в Соединенных Штатах сегодня не с кем говорить по многим вопросам, поскольку вакансии в администрации до сих пор не заполнены. Будь то Государственный департамент, будь то Министерство энергетики, будь то другие ведомства. Господин Уитков, при всем уважении к нему, не может решить все вопросы одновременно. Поэтому, на мой взгляд, необходимо формировать новую систему, новые подходы для того, чтобы те кризисные явления, которые имеются, чтобы их можно было решать. На мой взгляд, первый приоритет должен быть стабилизировать ситуацию вокруг так называемой иранской ядерной программы или иранского ядерного файла. Например, у России нет озабоченности, я говорю от своего имени, в отношении использования ядерных технологий в Иране. Насколько я понимаю, в Китае нет озабоченности. Именно поэтому наши три страны вместе выступают и в МАГАТЭ, и на площадке в Нью-Йорке с общими подходами. На мой взгляд, взаимодействие Ирана с МАГАТЭ должно стать одним из важных элементов будущего диалога по окончательному урегулированию ситуации вокруг иранской ядерной программы. И отрадно, что сегодня об этом много говорилось, что, несмотря на последние события, инспектора МАГАТЭ имеют возможность посещать и проводить инспекции на тех объектах, которые не были затронуты атаками со стороны США и Израиля. На мой взгляд, это важно. И третье, сегодня об этом тоже в этой аудитории говорилось, это региональное сотрудничество. И мне отрадно видеть, что отношения между Ираном и региональными, другими странами региона меняются. На мой взгляд, страны региона могут играть более важную, более заметную роль в снятии тех озабоченностей, которые в отношении иранской ядерной программы, в том числе в регионе, имеются. И госпожа Мадал Радван сегодня в ее выступлении говорила о подходах Саудовской Аравии, например. Поэтому, резюмируя, на мой взгляд, вопросы международного права, нарушения международного права крайне важны, мы должны их обсуждать. Но мы должны также и думать, что дальше. И стараться более проактивными быть, предлагать свои инициативы, свои подходы. В последнее время, к сожалению, лидерами в подходах, в выработке подходов были США и Европа, и именно, на мой взгляд, отчасти поэтому мы оказались в том кризисе, в котором сегодня находимся. Самое последнее, если можно, это не значит, что европейские страны не могут внести свой вклад. Соединенные Штаты не могут внести свой конструктивный вклад. Но для этого им надо как минимум быть готовым к компромиссу. На мой взгляд, невозможно вести диалог, заниматься дипломатией, когда одна из сторон оперирует понятиями ультиматумов и максималистских требований. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. In order to continue the interpretation, I will have the final timing for the panelists. In 1 minute each panelist, so we will start from you. Of course, the issue of breakthrough for future is an important element that everyone has in its own mind, and we heard from His Excellency Minister Arakchi today morning that Iran is ready for diplomacy, but we know that diplomacy cannot happen without taking into consideration the past. We are not going to enter a new atmosphere without fully taking account of the past experience. So this makes the situation very hard. You have a document which was called Comprehensive JCPOA, 159 pages, and we had 5 rounds of diplomatic negotiation, and all that happened after that diplomacy. So I would appreciate, due to the limitation of time, if we will have 1 minute final remarks, all of you. So Mr. Khlopkov, please.
If we speak about the past experiences, for me, GCPOA was a success story. It failed at the end, but the whole process of negotiations demonstrated how much multilateral diplomacy could contribute. And I would think about that example in the future as well, because the past experience also demonstrated to us a lot how vulnerable bilateral agreements are when there is not a precedent, but number of precedents when one or another country withdrew from so many bilateral documents. So multinational approach with a special role, if we speak about nuclear issues, IA should be followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chinappi, please.
Yeah. So let me clarify, because I absolutely agree with you that Europe is not just the European Union. But of course, when I was criticizing, I was meaning the European Union. For me, Europe is the whole continent. That includes Russia as well, because Russia is a part of European history, culture, so it's also part of Europe. But unfortunately, nowadays we have this division. So when I was criticizing, I meant the European Union. So let me add something else about the matter of diplomacy and agreements between powers. Unfortunately, we have seen that the United States use diplomacy as a means to achieve their goal, which is world hegemony since 1945. We have seen it with Iran because they withdrew from the agreement unilaterally without a reason. We have seen it with the expansion of NATO in the east of Europe. They promised not to expand NATO in the east of Europe, but that's actually what they did in the past 20 years. And we've seen in other situations around the world. So unfortunately, until there is one of the main actors of international diplomacy that is not respecting their agreement they take themselves, another case is with Taiwan. They officially adhere to one China policy, but they violate it constantly. So until there is one actor that is not respecting the agreements, I don't know what is the future for international law.
Thank you very much. Minister Harabin, we may also have your final words.
Я хочу напрямо сказать, что Израиль явно одновременно нарушает свои международные обязательства по уставу. Еще раз.
الان باتری رو عوض کردم میشنوید.
Израиль одновременно нарушает свои международные обязательства по уставу ООН. И при этом терроризует соседние государства. Иран выполняет свои обязанности согласно статьям 2 и последующим договора о нераспространении ядерного оружия. Израиль не подтверждает, не признает, что владеет ядерным оружием. Однако факт, то, что он атакует ядерные объекты, однозначно представляет собой террористический акт. Я это могу сказать как уголовный судья. Вся моя жизнь профессиональная была как уголовный судья. Я выходим из фактов, которые публично открыты. И у этих фактов, без сомнения, нет разделов и распоров. Последнее я хочу выразить одну идею, что и эта встреча в Тегеране будет апеллом для всех людей на планете Земля, чтобы сделали все, чтобы мы не добились до ядерного взрыва.
Спасибо. Thank you very much. MP Wallace, you have the floor for final feedback and reactions.
Thank you. International law is in trouble, but we shouldn't be without hope. The UN is a troubled organization, but at the moment it's the best we have, and instead of binning it, we should try and fix it. We have seen the rule of the might. Since 1945, the Americans have dropped more bombs than every other country in the world put together. And they have created huge devastation and destruction. And actually most of it, apart from having their 800 military bases worldwide, their control of the dollar has probably done even more damage, where we now know that since 1970, 38 million people have died from sanctions that the US and the Europeans signed off on. But listen, there is another way, and the future is multilateralism. We have all the small countries of the world, I suppose with the global south at its core, have to work together. And we have to isolate the rogue states. If Israel had got no support in the last 2 years in Gaza, there'd have been no genocide. It was a collective war. They had the support with, according to Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur, there were 63 states directly complicit in the genocide. They couldn't operate alone. The Americans cannot operate alone either. The challenge for us in Europe is to come up with a different political class that is not subservient to them. The people of Europe opposed the war in Gaza 95%. They opposed the war in Ukraine 85%. The political class do not represent them, and anyone that says they do is not telling the truth. But we have a huge problem with our elections. Money decides most of the time who gets into power, and we have to address that. But the people of Europe are on the streets because they're sick of the politics that's supposed to represent them. So we have to change that. And if the Europeans, people say, okay, there's no hope for the Europeans, but I still think there's hope. And I think we can be different. And if we are, we can abandon the rogue. We can do business with America if they behave themselves, but we shouldn't have anything to do with them if they don't behave themselves. Multilateralism is the future. We all need to work together and challenge the rogues.
Many thanks. Before concluding, we will have the pleasure to have the final statement from His Excellency Dr. Gharibabadi. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Hossein. I summarize my concluding remarks, and I try to be very brief. There have been moral hazards, taking into consideration the armed attack against Iran's peaceful nuclear activities. The first one is that the bad behaviors have been rewarded, unfortunately, through encouraging the illegal acts. So this is the first moral hazard. The second is that I do not want to use the term international community, but at least some of the members of the international community have encouraged the illegality or the illegal acts. So this is a fact, unfortunately. The third is that some of them also have extended the tensions through rewarding the illegal behaviors of some states. And the fourth is that the culture of cooperation has been diminished dramatically. If you be as a member of the NPT and to be in the context of the non-proliferation regime, you will be punished. And if you stay, you will be rewarded. What we have seen regarding the Israeli regime. So this is a very bad message that we learn from these kind of illegal acts. In the attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities, the Security Council of the United Nations failed. The IAEA Board of Governors failed. The IAEA Director General failed. The United States failed. The E3 failed. The Director General of the IAEA even didn't report the attacks to the Security Council. And when we ask him that you have the responsibility to present a report to the Security Council to say that what has happened to the installations, that you are monitoring, your inspectors are there. He said that I need an instruction from the Board of Governors. It's ridiculous. We have seen that, so how many times he went to Ukraine without any mandate from the Board of Governors. He condemned the attacks without any mandate from the Board of Governors. But when it came to the turn of Iran, they kept silence. So all of them failed. So this is a very bad lesson. And I want to say that this is not only regarding Iran. Today is Iran, tomorrow will be the other countries. And we see that nowadays, several countries, including the countries in our region, now they are moving forward to use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Nobody knows that what would happen to their nuclear installations in the future, specifically through the threats that are posed by the Israeli regime. They do not tolerate the peaceful use of nuclear energy in the region. So this is a fact. What we have learned from the activities in Iraq, in Syria, in Iran, and in future in other countries, so that would be a very dramatic lesson that we learn. And the world, the international community, the United Nations Security Council should put an end to this barbarism and also to these very the crimes that are committed by the Israeli regime and also by the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. It's very sad to conclude this panel. I think what I understood from this panel and the previous panels today morning shows us that there is a deadlock on diplomacy and there is no plausibility for an effective diplomatic movement for future. Even though, as MP Wallace said, we are human and we hope. I would like to end and terminate this session with the statement by Secretary General of the UN on UN Charter Day this year, in June 2025. He said that the UN Charter is not optional. It is not a la carte menu. It is the bedrock of international relations. We cannot and must not normalize the violations of its most basic principles. So violations could be the facts, but ignorance of the facts is a big sin that everyone shares it. I would like to join me to applaud the panelists of this panel for their insightful. Thank you very much. And we will continue with the next program.